Nobody expected this moment to mean anything. It looked normal, almost forgettable, like just another interview, another calm conversation in a league full of noise. But if you were paying attention, really paying attention, something felt different. Because the way Caitlin Clark spoke wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, and it definitely wasn't designed to go viral. And that's exactly what made it dangerous. There were no bold claims, no emotional reactions, no headlines waiting to explode. Just a calm, controlled confidence that didn't ask for attention, it demanded it. And in that moment, without raising her voice, without forcing anything, she sent a message to the entire WNBA, a message that most people completely missed. But once you understand what she really meant, you start to realize something uncomfortable. This isn't just another rising star story. This might be the moment everything begins to change. Main script, 1,000 words. At first, nothing about it seemed unusual. A simple appearance, a few answers, a relaxed tone that didn't hint at anything major. But that's exactly where people made the mistake. Because in sports, the biggest shifts rarely come from loud moments. They come from quiet ones. Moments where the message is hidden in the tone, not the words. And that's what made this different. Because Caitlin Clark wasn't speaking like someone trying to prove herself anymore. She wasn't trying to convince anyone she belonged. That phase was already over. And that's where things started to change. Because once a player stops chasing validation and starts controlling the narrative, everything shifts. The energy changes. The expectations change. And more importantly, the way other players see you changes. This wasn't confidence. It was certainty. The kind of certainty that doesn't need approval. The kind that quietly tells everyone else something is coming. But here's what nobody realized. This moment didn't exist on its own. It was built over time. Every game, every setback, every question that followed her rise. Because not long ago, the conversation around her wasn't this clear. There were doubts. Questions about how her game would translate. Questions about pressure. Questions about whether she could carry the weight of expectations that were growing faster than anyone predicted. And then came the setback. The kind that forces players to slow down, to step away, to deal with something they can't control. And in moments like that, things usually go one of two ways. Either the player comes back uncertain, trying to find their rhythm again, or they come back different, stronger, sharper, more focused. And when she returned, it was clear which path. She chose, because what happened next wasn't just a comeback. It was a statement. Not the loud kind, not the kind that dominates headlines for a day and disappears. This was the kind of statement that builds slowly, game by game, moment by moment, until suddenly there's no ignoring it anymore. She didn't look like someone adjusting. It looked like someone who had already figured everything out. And that's where things started to feel uncomfortable for the rest of the league. Because when a player comes back better than expected, it forces everyone else to adjust. Game plans change. Defenses shift. Attention increases. And suddenly, it's not just about stopping a player anymore. It's about dealing with something bigger. But it didn't stop there. Because while most players would focus only on performance, she started doing something different. She started influencing the conversation, not just about games, but about the league itself, about where things are going, about what comes next. And that's a completely different level of impact. Because once a player steps into that space, they're no longer just competing. They're shaping the direction of everything around them. And that's not something you can defend against. You can slow down a scorer. You can adjust to a playmaker. But you can't stop influence. It spreads. It grows. It changes how people think. And that's exactly what started happening. You could see it in the way people talked about her. Not just as a player, but as something more. A presence. A force. Someone who wasn't just part of the league, but someone the league was starting to revolve around. And whether people wanted to admit it or not, that changes everything. Because now every game feels different. Every matchup carries more weight. Every moment becomes part of a bigger story. And that kind of pressure doesn't disappear. Builds, it follows you. Forces you to either rise or fall under it. And based on everything we've seen so far, she's not running from it. She's stepping into it. And that's where the warning becomes real. Because it was never about what she said. It was about how she said it. The calm tone, the steady confidence, the complete lack of hesitation. That's not something you fake. That's something that comes from knowing exactly where things are going. But here's the part that should really get your attention, because this isn't happening in isolation. The league itself is changing, growing faster than ever. More attention, more pressure, more expectations. I'm right in the middle. Of all of it, she's not reacting to the change. She's moving ahead of it. And when a player starts doing that, it creates a gap. A gap between where everyone else is and where they're going. And closing that gap isn't easy, okay? Because it's not just about skill anymore. It's about mindset, awareness, control. And now there's one more piece that connects everything. Because after everything we've seen, after the comeback, the confidence, the influence, there was one moment that made it all clear. She didn't hold back. She didn't soften it. She didn't leave room for doubt. She said it directly. There, coming for it all. And once those words are out there, everything changes. Because now it's not just internal belief. It's public. It's real. Every team hears it. Every player remembers it. And more importantly, every opponent responds to it, because that's how competition works. Statements like that don't disappear. They turn into motivation for everyone else. They create tension. They raise the stakes. And suddenly, every game becomes more than just a game. It becomes a response. And that's where things get dangerous. Because now it's not just about whether she can deliver. It's about whether the rest of the league is ready for what happens if she does. CTA, 100 words. If you've made it this far, then you already know this story is far from over. Because what we're seeing right now might just be the beginning of something much bigger. And once the season fully unfolds, everything we talked about is going to be tested in real time. So the real question is, are you ready to watch it happen? Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stay locked in. Because the next chapter of this story is coming fast. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when everything finally comes together.